we're going to try things a little bit differently. I'm going to moderate this session from the floor. We're also going to open questions from the audience as well, right from the beginning. So I just want to start with something, Dominique, I'm going to just put you on the spot a little bit. So obviously, when we design our program, we want to have companies on stage that are leaders in a market, that do something that forges a path for the rest of the industry to follow. So we're looking for success stories. And clearly, Merlin, you've accomplished quite a bit in a lot of areas, including in tapping into the Chinese market. Not an easy thing to do for a Western company. So what I would like to hear from you, because everyone here, or so many, we're businesses, we're entrepreneurs, we tend to make more mistakes than we do have successes. I would like to hear about something that you all tried along the journey that didn't work out. What was an early, I don't know, could I say a screw up that you learned from very quickly and corrected?
I think it was more than anything, it was approaching the market with a Western viewpoint. That was the single thing that we did, that if we could wind the clock back and say, we will understand the market better.
So what's an example of a Western viewpoint?
A Western viewpoint would be approaching tour operators and having brochure coverage and building websites, for example, in our domestic attractions in China, and finding actually nobody visits those websites, nobody consumes in that way. I'm very often asked by our attractions, should I create a Mandarin page for my website? And I say, if you have nothing better to do, go ahead. However, nobody will visit that site. You're much better either embedding your brand into one of the ecosystems like the Fliggy platform and creating a brand zone there where there are consumers looking for product, or you're better investing in a really strong WeChat campaign, but ensure that you close the loop. So there's another learning. We've done a lot with WeChat in London, for example. We have mini programs. We accept payment through the WeChat system. We post commentary and, like you would post your tweets or through Twitter. We put all that in effort and energy in, but we didn't close the loop. And the important thing is to close the loop either by directing them to your brand or by directing them in a partnership to an OTA partner who can then facilitate that sale.
So Wilfred, so you've recently joined Klook, but you spent many years operating in the Asian market, spent many years with Agoda, an online travel agency for accommodations, so you know the market very well. There aren't a whole lot of success stories of Western companies across a whole range of industries, certainly in travel, certainly in tours, activities, and attractions, going into the Asian market where there are success stories, like in the case of booking. It's through acquisition in some cases. So tell us, what do you see from your vantage point operating in the region? What are some common mistakes that Western companies make when they're thinking about going into Asia?
Well, firstly, for Merlin, not every operator has the luxury to actually have operation on the ground in Asia or in China, Greater China, to have that learning. Most of our friends, the operators here, just wouldn't have that opportunity. But getting back to your point on why some of the companies are successful and some of them not in Asia, I guess most of the ones that are successful are the ones that really engage very locally and build a team from the ground up within Asia. The ones that are not particularly successful are the ones that have sent their team over from other parts of the world and go there to establish an operation the same and basically replicate what they have and try to do it from there. And then they recruit local employees in Asia, but they tell them to do exactly what they've been doing overseas in other markets. Very similar to the example that Dominique has given.
So Dominique, you spoke a bit about WeChat. can we, Bax, can we put the screenshots of WeChat? I think we've got some shots of the Klook app within WeChat. So I'm sure everyone here knows about WeChat, but there's no real example or comparable in, say, the United States or in Europe. Okay, I use WeChat, but I don't really use WeChat. I don't understand what it means when I've got my whole life, my whole world, not on my phone, but actually on an app within my phone. I mean, Wilfred, so I have two questions. Can you just first kind of walk us through what is a super app? Like, why is this concept taken off in Asia and not in, say, Europe? And what does it mean? How can we, as outsiders, how should we be thinking about it?
The concept itself, imagine if Google merged with Facebook and merged with Amazon and merged with Microsoft at the same time, and may also extend the service to a few other travel businesses.
I think that's something everybody here would welcome. I have no doubt. Right?
And how it happened is there's an engagement point for this app companies or mobile companies. Most of them are coming from a social channel, sharing information, communicating, posting reviews, photos or video contents. And when people start to engage, they start to extend the service to test. Basically, a lot of the services are experiments at the early stage because they operate very much like a tech company, that they don't have, beyond that, they want to engage with the user, build a massive user base. They don't really have a very clear direction at any one point in time. Well, over time, when they build a business, then it's clear. But before it happens, they were like, okay, we have 5 concepts. Let's build 5 teams and test everything out. The 5 things could be messaging, could be food delivery, could be taxi hailing, could be travel as well. And over time, well, over time in China means like 6 months. Over time, 2 of the 5 will work out, and then they double down investment and becomes a pillar product. And that's how it started. And the ones that are successful in travel are the ones that has really committed to look at the end-to-end service delivery. Not just delivering information, not just delivering a transaction, but actually creating an ecosystem where people can share, can communicate, can provide feedback, and can use that information while they're on the road, because remember, everything is on a mobile phone.
Can we just put those screens back on, the screenshots? So can you just, so what does it mean, so from an app experience within WeChat, can you just kind of point us to these screens and walk us through it?
You will see there's a photo on the one side. That is the product page. So this is within a WeChat environment. If someone is opened a WeChat, think of it as a browser within an app. And then you will see a product. This one is provided by us for an attraction in Bangkok. And in there, people will experience information that's similar to what we have on our own app, but a little bit stripped down version. And then in the middle one, as they can look at other additional product available, they can interact. But once you go to the last part here, it said WeChat Pay. That WeChat take over the user again. The transaction happens within the WeChat platform. The handling of the payment, if there's exchange rate, if there's some currency going around, and if there is customer data, it's all going back to WeChat. So we are given, as an operator, as a partner of WeChat, we're given a window to promote, to engage. But when it comes to transaction and customer ownership, we pass it back to WeChat. And they will finish the whole loop to make sure that the customer actually have a successful transaction and will be able to enjoy the service.
So question to both of you then around, so I am a larger operator or attraction. I'm ready, hungry for Asian travelers. I'm going to go in. So I build a website. Do I build an app? Do I build an environment within one of the super apps within Asia? What do I do it all? What do I do? Where do I start, Dominique?
For me, again, kind of with that hindsight of starting the journey, I would find my specialists first. So this is a huge market, and to distribute across that range, you need lots of partners. So I'd find the specialists first. Before I invest in anything of my own, I would work with partners and put that investment into their platforms and their ecosystems. And then I would look at how to develop the connectivity as a second stage with those partners into our own owned ecosystems. That would be my advice.
Wilfred?
Again, like I mentioned at the beginning, Dominique and Merlin in general, they have the luxury, as with a few other large operators, to have that kind of resources to engage in a very strategic way. But I see that a lot of our partners, the operators around the world, they may not be able to go through that process in a reasonably manageable time and costs. And I think it's more, well, firstly, China is a huge market, is a huge country. And every single city is equivalent to a country in population, economics, and other factors. So it's very possible to actually to target to a single city, to penetrate, to market, to promote, to engage with the audience. At the same time, China has 1.3 billion people. The entire Asia has 4 billion people. Southeast Asia has 600 million people. Japan has 120 million. So the important thing for the operators here who are very keen to develop in Asia is you may want to pick a market where you think is attractive to you. You think there is already existing traffic coming through and you want to get a fair share, and to really zero in and be more targeted into which country, which city, and which segment in particular that you want to focus on, and develop a strategy accordingly. One quick example would be if you are operating a jungle adventure tour, then you might only want to target people who is within a certain age range. And the way to engage with people, for example, 20 to 35 years old, you may not want to go through the traditional tour operators and distributors because they may not have as much engagement with that particular segment. It may be through the Facebook equivalent of that particular country that you want to drive some campaigns, some mini campaigns at a relatively low cost and push your brand out, or you work with a partner like Klook to test those markets quickly, and you will see an impact within a month or two, whether there's any pickup, whether there's any demand coming through. So be target and also be ready to experiment.
So I want to shift now from customer acquisition to delivery, and I think this is a real challenge. I am a small to medium-sized operator in any of a number of cities in Europe. So do I have to create a new tour? Should I do it? Do I have to have a Chinese language speaker guide? Or should it be Indonesian? Should I? How do I? And what kinds of changes do I have to make experientially within the tour experience? And actually, just one larger question: should we be even thinking about? I mean, how do we even think about Asia? I always, at conferences like this, we have to have a session on Asia, but it's to think of Asia as a single market is such a Western orientation. It's as though the traveler from China and the traveler from New Zealand are completely in sync with one another and behave the same way. So from an experience delivery perspective, where do I even begin? Dominique?
For me, it's about, similar to what Wilfred was saying there about knowing who your target audience is and starting from there. So if you understand the consumer, as in any marketing strategy or plan, if you understand who the consumer is that you are targeting, you will then find the product to match the needs of that consumer. So understand who you are trying to get to and research and study the behaviors, understand where they're consuming, how they're consuming their communication? How do they get to know about your product in the first place? It isn't about having to tailor a product, but if you can tailor a product, of course it's going to have a bigger impact in the long term. But you may want to start by trying to use a product that you have, but by making sure that you place that product where that particular consumer that you're looking for, where they are looking to consume. So I think it's about ensuring you understand what you're going after. As you said before, Doug, it's a huge market. So you need to start to segment that like you would if you were approaching the UK market. How do I segment that? It may be into demographics or buying behavior or visitation patterns. And the same should be applied to this wider market.
Wilfred, the last word, advice for the small to medium-sized operator. Where do I even start on the guest experience?
Well, I believe being targeted is just so critical. It's such a vast market, and at the same time, it's such a high growth market that you cannot ignore. So be very targeted in a specific country or even a city within a large country in China, like China or Japan or India. And the rest of Asia work with different operators to cast the distribution net wide and big. I mean, Klook is obviously a good place to be, to work with, but there are other players in the market, and do go there and explore for yourself to see what the distribution channel is like, penetrate a little harder into the target market, try out different things.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dominique Sidley, Wilfred Fan. Thank you.
Thank you.